Then I hesitate for a second. There's a sort of covered player coming in to make a tackle, and I went sort of to take. I had an injury at the start of 2011, and that was a dislocated hip. So, well, I think the biggest thing was I came back. It was 2019. I injured, came back in 2019. Then 2020 was the COVID year. So, it was the really difficult year where. I literally go, okay, I'm in this situation now. What is a parallel I can draw from sport? And then I apply that, and in everything. And
hello, and thanks for tuning in today. This week's episode is brought to you in conjunction with Upskilled and their mini MBA. If you want to get the skills and knowledge to help move you forward without all of the big expense, then this mini MBA with Upskilled is the right way to go. Follow the link in the show notes and you can get $500 off. Chris, welcome to the show. Good to have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate, and I'm looking forward to it.
I am very much looking forward to this conversation, mainly because we talk frequently anyway about the services that you provide to support athletes in that life after sport. And so actually getting you onto the show is going to be really interesting because, one, I get to learn a bit more about your journey, but then also, two, we can talk a lot more about how you're working, at least in part, with athletes, amongst other things.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, looking forward to sort of diving into that and how it all came about. And as I said, how we're supporting athletes during their career and post-career as well.
Yeah, too easy. Well, look, Chris, for those listening and watching who don't know who you are, give us the infomercial, mate.
So, name is Chris Lawrence, played 15 years professional rugby league for the West Tigers. Debuted when I was quite young, 17 years of age, still in high school, so thrown sort of straight into the deep end. Was very fortunate enough to have a 15-year career. Again, fortunate enough to play for Australia, played sort of 6 test matches, had a couple of really unique injuries, which probably stunted parts of my career into even the longevity of it, and then build a business during my career to help athletes amongst other groups. Working in education, and that's what I've rolled into now, post my footy career now, going on 5 years post-retirement. So body still sort of feels the old aches and pains of playing every now and then, but everything's going well.
That's great. I thought you were going to say the body feels like it could get back into it and ready. Just give another call up.
No chance. I probably was. I probably could have said that for the first maybe year, 2 years, and then there was definitely a period where I was like, yeah, there's no way, even if I wanted to, and you could have, paid me all the money you wanted, I just physically wouldn't have been able to do it.
No, but it's one of the bits you said there, which I think is really interesting, is you jumped in at 17, debut. Really, I mean, did it feel like you achieved your dream at 17?
Yeah, well, I think as a young player coming through, or for most players, that your dream is to play first grade football. So, and you don't really see it as I suppose necessarily I want to have a career. It's more, you love the game so much, and that is the goal, just to achieve sort of those things. It was probably only, to be honest, maybe the year before, when you get into the SG ball, which is the SG ball sort of age group now, around that 17, 18, 19 years of age, where it actually becomes, closer to a reality, because you realise you're not far off. You see guys that might have been in this squad maybe 2 years earlier, who are now debuting. So you can start to see that this might be a real possibility. If you keep working hard and you keep improving your game, that you get that opportunity. Never did I think that I was going to, make my debut so early. It was in year 12, my second year of playing SG ball. The age group for the SG ball at that point in time was the 18s. It's now 19s at the moment. But it played in my second year and pretty much went for the end of my SG ball season. And a lot of the guys then got called up into the Jersey Flag, where SG ball was only a shortened competition. finished around May. Probably funny story in that the Jersey Flegg side at the time was actually going really well for West and the West Tigers, and I was playing for the West Magpies in their pathway system, and the coach said, look, we've got a winning team. I don't really want to change your winning team. There's a couple of the SG ball players that were playing really well. Look, you guys are just going to sit on the bench, and to be honest, you might not get much game time in the next little bit unless there's injuries. So we're young guys, so that's fair enough. We'll just take it as it is. And this was one of the first sort of training sessions, sitting on the sideline whilst the main group sort of do their work. Whilst I was doing that, the reserve grade coach, or the New South Wales Cup coach, comes up and said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I told him about what the Jersey Flegg coach said. Said, "Leave it with me." Goes and has a chat. The coach comes back and says, "Come on, you're over with me. You're playing reserve grade this week." So I went from being able to make the whole squad for Jersey Flegg to then starting. Actually, I think I started off the bench for reserve grade. Played 8 reserve grade games and then got called up to play first grade.
That is an amazing story, Chris. I didn't know that. And it goes to show, I don't know, the role of luck in some respects comes into, it didn't determine your talent, but what it meant was you were thrust straight away into effectively the big league. You're up there with the men, with the reserves.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it definitely helped me because the level between the Jersey Flegg teams and, again, the reserve grade teams, definitely, you're playing, I think it was under 20s back then, men, grown men, those, and I still remember playing in some games, against Souths, against Bulldogs and teams that, and you looked up and playing as first graders that you've been watching on TV for years, some players at the back end of their career. So definitely sort of hardened you up, and look, played, must have played well enough to, I suppose, get an opportunity. But even then, you talk about luck. Like how my debut came about is, I was playing well enough that Tim Sheen's, really good development coach for younger players. He always had this thing that he would get young players to then come and be 18th and 19th man, back when 18th and 19th man didn't have to sit on a bench, but just to come and train with the team on an away trip, just to do the few sessions before the captain's run, travel, just to get an idea of what it's like to prepare for a game in that sort of environment, like a really good experience. So did that, and we're training 2-3 days out from the game. And one of the players, Paul Fadawira, went down with a hamstring injury, and then Tim Sheen just walked up to me and goes, "Looks like you're playing, kid." And that was it. So I didn't have an NRL contract. Like, they had to rush a contract through. I had to rush my dad home from work because I wasn't 18, so I couldn't sign it. He had to sign it for me. And then 3 days, like 2 days later, I'm flying to Brisbane. 3 days later, I'm sort of running out on the field in front of 40,000 people at Suncorp. So it was, when talked about sort of thrown in the spotlight. Look, again, one, obviously luck. So you get luck. And I think with everything too, it's about, there's always, everyone gets an opportunity. It's just what you do when that door opens. You take that opportunity, and I was fortunate enough to take it.
Well, not only take it, how did you know you were ready?
Well, I probably didn't. I didn't realise at the time. I knew it was such a big leap, but I look back at footage now, and I look and think, I wonder what the other teammates must have been thinking. Like, they would have been thinking, what is Tim Sheen's doing? This scrawny little kid, we're going to play on the wing. Like, what's he thinking? He's going to get crushed. Like, I didn't see how it was such a big leap. At the time, because I played in reserve grade, I thought I played a few games against men, but the speed, obviously, the jump is that next level. So I one thing, and it was very much, I'm glad it happened in that way. I didn't have time to overthink. It was just thrown. You just and the one piece of advice, and you talk about sort of timing and getting opportunities and just moments, but about to run out. And it's probably only really when we went out for warm-up, and then it was half full stadium at Suncorp, 20,000 people. I'm like, really hit me then. So obviously nerves really started kicking in then. came back in from warm up, and you can just hear the crowd, like full stadium, Sunday afternoon at Suncorp. And Tim Sheens just said to me before I ran out, listen, I picked you for a reason. When you get the opportunity in the game, I want you to back yourself. So I just had those. That sort of was good because I'm like, okay, just back yourself. You guys just relax, just back yourself when you get out there. And then 20 minutes in the game, there was a loose ball, sort of going end-to-end footy. I think it was 0-0. Loose footy. I was playing on the wing. Our centre picks it up and just tips it to me. And then I've got the open sideline sort of going ahead. So I take off. Then I hesitate for a second. There's a sort of covered player coming in to make a tackle. And I went sort of to take in my head a stroke. And again, and you look at the replay, it is like, tenths of a second this is happening. But the thoughts going through my head in that moment is step off your right foot, take the conservative option. It's first tackle, like it's first. And then I just had this in my mind, back yourself from what Sheensy said. Yeah. And so that split second, then I pin the ears back, try to take the player on the outside, get in the outside and score. So I score first side of the game. And so, schoolboy kid, no one knew, like, who is this kid? What's his name? This young kid. And, we ended up going on to win the game. And from that, I was still in high school. The next day I had a HSC exam. So I had to fly back to school on the flight home, didn't sort of know what to do. I enjoyed school and I did well in school, got the books out to start studying, and then Chris Hyington sort of sitting next to me, he goes, "What are you doing, mate? Put that away. Enjoy it and just worry about your exam tomorrow." So I had to rock up the next day, but then had like cameras following me, like the news cameras, news story, Tigers won the comp the year before, and, were struggling to make the 8. And then it's like all of a sudden they got this big story, young schoolboy kid keeps his, Tiger season alive. So it was very much thrown in the deep end, like physically in the game, but then having to deal with media, like pressure, scrutiny, it was, very steep learning curve.
Yeah. And what an entrance as well. And, you talk there about, I asked you, how did you know you were ready? You're saying you weren't ready. It's interesting, just that little voice or that guidance that you were given beforehand in terms of backing yourself. And just as you're about to say, I'm not ready, boom, you took off. And you took a gamble, right? And for you, it certainly paid off. But before continuing down that path, I'm interested then, what was the exam that you had to get back for? Do you remember what the subject was? Hi, I want to take this moment to thank Upskilled and their mini MBA for sponsoring this week's session. One of the great things about their mini MBA is it allows you to gain the skills and knowledge to help propel you that little bit further forward. It gets you understanding the vocabulary in the room and also gives you some of those skills to navigate the corporate career, the government career, or indeed stepping into not-for-profit. So big thanks for Upskilled and the mini MBA for sponsoring this week. And hey, check it out. Link in the show notes. You can get $500 off.
English exam.
English exam. So it's an exam worth doing.
Style exam, so I don't think I did too well. It's quite hard to concentrate.
Yeah, I bet it was. And I bet you still had, like you say, all the cameras following you. It doesn't even help you get the exam mode as you go in. School, academic. Clearly you stayed through year 12, which is upper sixth or senior at high school. And did you have a path mapped out if you didn't do the rugby route?
Yeah, I always, not necessarily, but there was two lines or sort of career paths, I suppose, that I knew I was really interested in. One is around health and fitness, and one was around business. In school, they were the two, paths I was really interested in, enjoyed those subjects, did well. So I actually got into, did well in my HSC, and actually got into do an exercise and sports science degree, at university. So decided to go down that path. Again, in hindsight, if I look back at it, would I have gone down that? Well, no, because I wouldn't have ended up there. But that shaped pretty much how, and the events that occurred into why I dropped out really shaped again how and why I started an education company.
Mm-hmm. When you say go down that path, what do you mean?
Go down the health and fitness, two parts. The health and fitness part in that specific field, and potentially university at that stage. That path, everyone who is wanted to be a physio. Everyone wanted to be a physio for a sports team. But then no one tells you that there's, across all unis every year, there's about 1,000 people in a physio course, and there's 15 or 16, or now 17 in a roll club. So the numbers just don't up. And most physios, and so I think if you're doing, if we were told that and really laid out again, and I suppose it's like the stats for playing football. Like you sit
I was going to say, yeah.
So, but I think differently to football, where you're like, I love the game. I love the game. So I would play for free, and if I don't, if I don't play first grade, no worries. Whereas this is a career. It's like, well, would you do it even if you weren't going to be a physio, or if you had to do the worst physio job ever? And I'm like, probably not. So I was only doing it because I thought, that was the option, and probably again the timing of going to uni at that point in time, the uni I went to, and just had a very bad experience, really negative experience, in that first year of university.
Well, when you were, what then follows in terms of full-time contracts, and what did you find challenging, from a study perspective and a playing perspective? What did you find difficult during those moments?
Well, I found, again, finishing my HSC, and I was really lucky straight after that first game, and this probably set the tone for, I suppose, my career, my mindset on having something away from sport. My parents at the game, first thing they said, obviously, so proud of you, but they said, remember, you got your HSC, you've worked really hard, don't throw it away, just like make sure you finish it off, work hard, finish HSC, and then obviously, footy can sort itself out. So just that little bit of like that mindset straight away to make sure, okay, well, that's good. Like I can celebrate this, but I don't have to throw everything I've done the last, few years. Let's just, I've got a couple of months left of exams and I'm finished year 12. So let's just finish it off. And then what I found is, even though the next day exam was pretty difficult to concentrate, but again, the media scrutiny, I didn't know how to deal with. I wasn't media trained. I didn't know how to deal with. So I wasn't very much an extroverted person. So I found it really tough. And so I found just really, I suppose, hiding away and focusing on, studying for the schoolwork is a really good escape from football. And then I played well towards the back end of the year, and I played every game for the rest of that season. So I thought, well, okay, like I found it as a good escape. I got into uni. I'll just accept uni, and I'll just try and manage uni and training full time. But then that's where the biggest struggle was, and unis are different at the moment. Right now, this is going back, but there was no accommodation and for universities, and again, the particular uni, which is known as a prestigious university, that probably was a bit more accommodating to rugby players and rugby union players, but there was no accommodating training. I still remember going to the coordinator and saying, look, I can't come to the tutorial on a Tuesday. We're always training on a Tuesday. Can I change to the Wednesday? Because there's some Wednesdays I have off. And to which the coordinator says, no, at this uni, you don't get to choose. You're told which one to do. And I explained about play professional sport and, play football. And, again, the coordinator said, can't you ask the coach to change training? I said, no, well, I play on TV,
Yeah.
And to which the response was, well, you got to decide what's more important, kicking a ball around or your education. And I cheekishly said, well, unless you're going to pay my salary every month, I think I'll choose kicking the football around. And so I was lucky enough, the actual lecturer for that particular subject was like, mate, do what you can do. I'll support you with notes and let what you can do. But got to the end of the year.
It's so short-sighted, isn't it? That from a tutorial, recognising they're in front of someone living out their dream in many respects, but also recognising the intelligence. You've also got an opportunity to study, get into a university like that, and be able to move forward. And they weren't able. I mean, they just weren't prepared. It seems to support you. For at least that one person. Yeah,
and look, don't get me wrong. There was plenty other really good lecturers and supportive people in there. But I suppose, I suppose, people can make generalizations about athletes in certain ways. This particular lecturer and a number of lecturers were in the bubble of, thinking and when I talked about, university and timing, like now working in education, I know people in a university system aren't in the real world. Like they feel like they're in bubble and often feel like they're above, and just speak down to people. So I very much got a bad taste in my mouth with that. Got to the end of the year and I'd actually just got through, but because I enjoyed school, I'm like, I'm going to come, even if I have and finish this course, like I'm not going to learn anything. Like, and the one probably point right at the end of the year, I got selected to play in the Australian Junior Kangaroos. We had and this was, I think it might have been the unit I couldn't attend and go to at all. I went to the same coordinator, said, look, I'm away for like a 10-day or 2-week period. And the day I think it was a Monday, I get back on the Sunday, and the Monday, the assessment was due, final assessment. And I said, can I get an extension because I'm not going to be doing work while I'm away? And it ended up giving me 3 days. So I'm like, okay. And I hadn't been to this tutor or, this unit at all. I had, luckily I have some friends that I went to school with and played sport with that actually doing the course. They let me share their notes. So I wrote this on myself. I think it was actually my thing of biomechanics. I think it might have been a biomechanics unit. But then I used their graphs. So I used their graphs, submitted it, get done for plagiarism. And so I'm like, get called in the office, and I'm like I was just so frustrated. And it was like, I'm trying to do everything the right way. Like I've written it myself. I haven't attended this. I don't any of the sessions, not by choice, just physically not being able to. And I've made you aware of this, and yet I'm getting called in, and got called in for a meeting where they it's just. And look, I'm usually pretty I suppose calm and collected and don't blow up, but they had a meeting, I think even with the vice dean, and said, look, this could go on your academic record, and if you don't redo your assignment, we're going to remove you from this, remove you from the course. And I said, don't bother. I said, I'm done with this. And said, amongst a few other things that if a bit different, if I was a rugby player, it'd be portrayed a bit different. But you look in hindsight and things that motivate you. That was the catalyst for going, no one understands how, or no one's really understanding the needs and demands of athletes. And it doesn't make sense. And again, it didn't make sense for universities or TAFEs or anyone to specifically design a line of education for athletes because they make up such a minority. So financially doesn't make sense. So it's like you have to fit into this, and if you don't, then you don't. And so that pretty much started just gave me over time the motivation to say, no, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, and I guess motivate you, one, to find a better way to study and, further your own knowledge and education. But I suppose also give you then this impetus that was perhaps dormant at the time, but change the way for athletes in the way that athletes can continue their education. So before we step into that then, I'm interested on those two things. One, how did you continue learning or education out of the game whilst being a player? And then two, let's talk about the culmination of injuries that made you have to think, okay, something may have to change here. I might have to come out of this game.
Yeah. So I then, from when I finished, the sort of dropped out of uni, I had about might have been a year where I didn't do anything. And I'm going to focus on footy. But I found myself riding the highs and lows too much. Like I just was in it and there was nothing else. There's nothing that was just keeping me balanced and level. And it's awesome when you're winning because it's all in it. But then it's, you see yourself when you see the players who are all in of that. Sometimes the losses, you can't then recover from the losses, and it's bouncing back's hard, and you have to get over it quickly to then perform the next week. So I'm like, I want to get back in education. I'm like, I'll go stay down the health and fitness line. So I went and did a Cert 3 and 4 in fitness, but did it online. I'm like, I'm going to go the complete opposite to like the face-to-face uni. I'm going online. But struggled, even as, proactive as I was, just lack of support. I needed some support and, sort of got through it all. But and that sort of, off the back of that led to me, and working with my now business partner, who was like most athletes who played reserve grade for a lot of years, a few injuries, and like at 23, he's like, I'm not going to make it. What else? And I haven't, haven't done any form of study since school. So that's where that started. But I think, aside from that, when we talk about the sort of having a business, whilst I was doing that, Cert 3 and 4, I started a couple of small businesses, a holiday coaching clinic for the footy kids, started some boot camps. I always, again, when I talked about the two sides of interest, business and sort of fitness, and then I was like, well, if I can merge them into one, that's sort of covered two things. So I just found doing things outside to keep my mind going just meant I didn't overthink or overanalyze when things weren't going right in footy. I could do that thinking and analysing and putting energy towards something that was proactive rather than, overthinking something that, I'm getting worked up or, in my own mind around my performance or how I performed or the tackle I missed on the weekend. When, again, and the older you get, you realise the quicker you flush it and just let it go, any mistake on the field, like if you can instantly just forget about it and move on, they're the high performers. And so I probably carried things too long, but I found education the quickest way to help me sort of move on from things.
Yeah, was it when doing that? So at what point in your career did you realise this might end? I'm going to have to find a different path.
Probably two times. Well, first was when I had an injury the start of 2011, and that was a dislocated hip. So pretty much right in the sort of prime of my career, sort of early to mid 20s, playing really well. Just debuted for Australia the year before. The hardest part about that injury, I was initially told that it could be a career, but we don't know until we get a scan 3 months later, and we need to make sure the blood flow to your hip's still going, because if it slows, because it was out for so long, they said it can slow the blood flow to your hip, which means you would need a hip replacement, which means career over. So that 3 month period pretty much was like just in limbo, and really, aside from having to talk about things to get through, serious injury, obviously having studying education was one thing, but I'd finished sort of my course, so having something to focus on building a business was one thing. But really, what got me through that was just the mindset to focus on what you control, and try to then just focus on getting back from that injury. That was probably the first time that I thought, well, this could be over. Again, it could be out of my hands. Like I can try and do everything I can to come back, and if I get told it's out of my hands, so I'm like, well, what can I do? I've dropped out of uni. I've now got a fitness qualification. I didn't necessarily want to be, not that I wanted to be a trainer forever, but for me, it was doing it to get back into learn more about your body, and then maybe go down the business side, not be a trainer. And so that's when I started. And that was right around the time that I'm like, well, I've got time to sort of think about a business. It could be over, and then my business partner at the time, business partner now, and at the time he had finished his career, sort of hung up the boots, went to uni, dropped out of uni, went to TAFE and did a fitness course via TAFE. And we just had the conversation one day and said, there's no way, athletes can't go 4 days a week at TAFE and train. And I had been playing 5 or 6 years by then, and I'm like, there's no way a lot of the players I know can get through an online course by themselves. Like, and it's like, well, let's build something. Let's build a course specifically for athletes, and that's where that idea started. Right around the time where I'm like, okay, well, it could be over anyway. So I'm like, let's start it. We were already sort of dabbling in those other businesses, and we're still sort of doing different things. And we're like, let's try this as well. So that's probably the first, real time. And then later on in my career, where I definitely knew it was another unique injury where pretty much, again, had a head clash and broke every single bone in my face. Had sort of 10 plates sort of now inserted in my place to sort of hold it together. And that was at the back end of my career. It did end up coming back from the injury and then playing one more year, but sort of knew that was it. And that was also around the time that it was the decision to make with that education business, in that, okay, is this going to turn into more than just a hobby, like, a business or a side, which it was for years, or is this going to be now a company that we're going to really grow? And that's where, and if so, we have to buy in, and this means that I've got to start getting ready now, because I ended up playing a couple more years. We had COVID, so there was barriers, but we have to start really, not that we weren't taking it seriously, but it is all chips in.
Yeah, I guess it's, you say chips in, it's that focus, it's being intentional. And you're at this flux point for you where would your career go next? Where would your playing career go next versus where could the business go next? Yeah. So that call, that putting the chips in, how did you make that decision? How did you know, again, were you ready for this?
Well, I think the biggest thing was so I came back, it was 2019, I'd injured, came back in 2019, then 2020 was the COVID year. So, it was the really difficult year where there was the break during the year. I knew then, just, I suppose, number one, that the body, I physically and mentally had put so much energy to returning after the facial injury, like just to overcome some of those demons of getting back into contact, and physically it took a lot out of me, like the back end of that year. And then I did a pre-season, and I was like, I don't know how many more of these pre-seasons I can do. I know. And then I started thinking, well, do I have some conversations? I wanted to keep playing, and I still had the drive to train every day, but at the intensity, the week in, week out that the NRL is, then again, the manager, and we had some conversations. Do we look at maybe some overseas opportunities where I can maybe play for a few more years? And COVID came, and I still was having those conversations. And then when we talk about what made you make the decision, I had to look at, we were very much at a crossroads with the business. The COVID, like all businesses, hit it. So it did have a hit on our business, where it's like, well, I need to make the call. If I decide to go over and play 2 more years in England, for example, I can pretty much say that the business won't be there when it's going to be too much on my business partner to keep running, or I go all in. So for me, I'm, as much as whether I wanted to keep playing or not, I sat down and with my wife and said, well, and she was probably more, again, wanted to say, look, keep playing. You only retire once, and everyone says that. I knew I was done, I think, from the NRL. I'm just like, the intensity, I think it's time to move on. But yeah, for me, it was, if I look in 10 years' time and look at what positions am I going to be in the best position, and I'm like, I'll be in a better position in 10 years' time if I decide to call time now and put the all in on the career, rather than do 2 more years of footy and then have to then find what else.
And I mean, I like the way you look forward, thought about yourself in 10 years, looking back, what would probably give you the best outcome. And it was, to an extent, painting that destination. Coming to that, then it's interesting, let's talk a bit about the business and what it is, because I like the way it came about. I like the way it came about from the sense that you were a player, your business partner as a player, you've done the study, you've gone through these challenges, and you thought there must be a better way. There must be a way for athletes to be their best athletic self and further their education as well. So tell me then, the business, how it's structured, what it does.
So again, we started the Business One Wellbeing, which again, under that umbrella, we did a few things when we did start the athlete education arm, but partnered with a registered training organisation or a private TAFE in sort of 2011, 2012 to deliver the fitness, or assist in delivering the fitness qualification to athletes. The reason we did that is that again, like myself, not that we necessarily thought every athlete was going to the industry, but it was a really good stepping stone back into educate, or like into that next phase. For my business partner, it was that he had not built these learning skills, and learning is a skill. So you leave, disengage at school at 16, which we see so many of our athletes we work with, to go, I'm just going to play football. It's 23, you're 23, 7 years later, I've got to find what's next, and you haven't had built any of those skills. So it's a lack of confidence. So like, this is a very good segue that athletes have confidence in fitness. They do it every day. We just have to make that connection for them, and immediately we can build learning skills by building confidence. So that is one of the reasons why we chose that course in particular, because it worked for us. And so that we can say, you've built some skills, you've got a qualification, you've got no more to help you be a better athlete. And hopefully that is the start of your next step, whether it's starting a business, coaching, PE teaching, strength conditioning, whatever it may be. So we did that for a number of years. Fortunately, the person who, or the mentor that we partner with, who owned his own RTO, he ended up going and selling his RTO around 2016. And then he sort of worked a couple of years through that. And once he had fully exited, he said, look, I want to help you guys, become your own. So I think it's probably time you become your own RTO. But I recommend doing it from scratch. I think don't make the mistake of sort of going and just buying it. And you need to understand how to operate this if you want to make this long term. So spent a few years, and that was sort of the whole then plan. We talk about building that into the future.
Yeah. So you were building that. You were doing a lot of this and that experience whilst playing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so for you, it wasn't a sort of cliff moment. It was sort of much more a leveling up, and suddenly you could see which was probably going to give you the life that you wanted to live more than the other, rather than, God, foot is gone, I have to figure out something else.
Yeah.
And, which is great. And, testament to the fact that you started early, or indeed you continued much of that path. So in terms of, business as athletes, I'm assuming as an athlete, it's competition, it's win, it's be the best. This is what they bid. And so from a business perspective, have you brought all of that with you now into running this business, or have you had to shift that in some way?
No, everything I do, and I sit on in conferences now and on panels, and now having built a business that has initially just worked with athletes. Now we work across a broad spectrum of cohorts, and now sort of run nationally. With a team that you're not only, it's not just you and other people, you're managing and you're leading and setting vision for your entire company. So the biggest thing I say is that everything I relate back to sport. Like, I literally go, okay, I'm in this situation now. What is a parallel I can draw from sport? And then I apply that, and in everything. And that is the most underrated thing and underutilized thing that players should be taking into when they leave, and understanding before they leave. Because especially with me, when it comes straight out of school, even into the system, even if they're not playing, they're into the system really young, so they don't get to see the other side, and just take for granted that this high performance mentality and how to keep is just how everyone else thinks, how everyone else acts. And so it can be as simple as, again, perfect example. Now, if you've got a team and they've got if they're not clear, like in a game, like a coach in a team, if I'm a back rower, if I'm not clear on what the coach needs from me, really clarity on what my role is, then I'm like, well, did I play good? How do you know if you're playing well or not? Whereas if the coach says to me, this week I need you to lead the kick chase, I need to put pressure on the half and be a running option. Now, if I just focus on those three things and I do those three things, I've played. Whether we win the game or not, I perform well. Now, in business, I can't expect my team to, if I haven't given them clear instructions to go, how are you going to win the week? These are the three things in your role. If you're doing these three things, you're winning your role and you're winning the week. And if they're not clear on that, how do I expect them to perform, or how do they know whether they play well? And and that's just sort of one example. But every single thing that I bring, everyone talks about resilience. Every athlete is resilient, not because of injuries, but the back end of a game, the most resilient you have to be is the 65th minute of a footy game where your lungs are burning, your lactic acid in your legs. You just don't know you don't know if you can hang on. And that ability just to hang in, and the difference between the good and the great are the ones that understand all I've got to do is hang in there and hang in there, and the opportunity will come. And in businesses, it's the same thing. People give up too easy. If you just have the same mindset, that's it. Just keep focusing on the next day, the next tackle, the next thing, and then you look up and the opportunity comes, and the competition's not there because you've been able to outlast them.
Yeah. And so when you look at where you are in the business now, whilst you've been technically in the business a long time, but since retirement and since athletic retirement and really giving it that focus, then where do you think I'm curious, where have you had to bring in that type of resilience? And have you had a sense of, I'm still hanging in?
Well, I think all the time, there's always, like in sport, you have things that go well. Eddie, I would say business is like an ongoing pre-season where there's no guarantee that it's going to end. There's no guarantee that you win a game. And there's the very odd chance you may get to a grand final and may win. But if you do, the win is massive. So it is like that, where every single day there is an issue and challenge, and then you might get the odd win. And then it's back to, okay, how do you address it? And business is about solving problems. If you can solve problems better than other people and deliver something that's going to add value in another way, then that's going to help you grow. So in terms of resilience of the business, again, in each area, because I've had to learn very quickly, and one of the biggest probably things, and even relating it to sort of what, when we speak to athletes, is that start early, not to be able to understand what career pathway, but everything you do it's an accumulation of skills. Again, you haven't magically played first grade because you started kicking a footy around at 16 and now at 20 at first grade. I imagine you started playing in the backyard when you were 6 years of age. How many passes back and forth do you think you've done between the age of 6 and 20? Probably millions. So that's millions of reps of doing a skill to allow you to be great at something. Now, you can't then go finish and then go, again, perfect example. And this was the realization for me where I'm like, okay, I really want to focus. This year is going to be, I want to focus on honing on sales and marketing. I want to really get good at sales and marketing. Now, I can't do 400 sales calls and think, well, I'm going to be an expert in it when I did a million passes. So I have to get a million sales calls to be the same level of an expert of that. So the realization is, number one, you need to start early. Number two, there's only a certain amount of skills you can be great at. And when you're not great at that, you have to have the right team to complement those skills. And so that, again, like with footy, everyone can't be the goal kicker and the half. Your strength is your strength, and you need the other people around you, which is what I say to athletes, just build skills, because the earlier you build skills, it means that, and you learn and you build experience, it doesn't matter what it is and what career it is. You've just built accumulation of skills that an opportunity arises solely because you built those skills, not because you were chasing your career.
And I mean, listen, you've just given some great advice, I think, for athletes, and actually beyond athletes. I think anyone who's looking to break down how do they find that sort of clarity in their career and what they might be good at, I think what you've just described will really help it. Well, listen, Chris, I've enjoyed our conversation, and I know there's going to be people listening, watching, who are going to want to get in touch with you. What's the best way to do that?
So if you go to onetraining.com.au website there, all inquiries can come through forward to me, or if you want to follow me on socials, Chris Lawrence04 on Instagram, or my Chris Lawrence on LinkedIn. Try to be more proactive on LinkedIn, particularly in the last 6 months. Again, making sure, I'm sharing part of the journey. And again, some of these thoughts here, it's just more like spitting out, these are my thoughts. And so anyone wanting to connect with me, I'm really passionate about people who've got are aligned like yourself, in this space, and not just within the athletic space, but it's more, how do we use what sport teaches us to try to excel and be the leaders in whatever industry. So again, anyone wants to reach out, more than happy to have a chat with them.
Love that. Chris, thanks a lot for joining me this afternoon. Really enjoyed hearing your perspective on finding clarity in our life, quite simply. Thanks a lot, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.